Good morning. The year 2023 had always been tagged as key in the Nigerian political journey. A successful change of the baton of leadership meant new and perhaps higher expectations based on the concept of leadership advertised during the 2023 general elections. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu left no one in any doubt as to the direction of his thoughts during his acceptance speech on the 29th of May at Eagle Square in Abuja. The bold decisions in key sectors of the economy have been followed by steps to confront the realities as well. With added responsibilities as the chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, there have been some hurdles to scale to keep the West African Brotherhood in sync. While the new ideas are being planted, those to cultivate them have been vetted, appointed, and given portfolios with a matching order to deliver on the renewed hope mandate. An 8-point agenda is the guiding document. They include food security, ending poverty, economic growth and job creation, access to capital, improving security, improving the playing field on which people and particularly companies operate, rule of law, and fighting corruption. In the first 100 days of the administration, we will examine the foundation laid by today's mason to ensure the building blocks of development remain strong. Our perspectives will be shaped by a panel of experts and the sectoral assessment of our correspondents. I am Fisayo Ogunfuyi. Welcome. We'll also be in Lagos and Maiduguri to get a closer and clearer picture of our economic security and humanitarian realities. Let me welcome our panelists. Ahmed Sajo is a public affairs analyst. He joins us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Our correspondents are already seated. Benny Adams is our business correspondent. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And Najatu Tijani will be telling us things from the defense perspective. I hope you have your defense, Najatu Tijani.
Thank you very much.
And talking about humanitarian activities, we have Ilyasu Yakubu also seated in the studio.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Guys, we'll get to you in a short moment. I know you are chomping at the bit. But let's take a background report. Of course, as I said earlier, we will be joining our correspondents in Lagos and Maiduguri as well. Michael Olaile is standing by in Lagos, and later on we'll join Mohammed Goni in Maiduguri. But before we go to the discussion per se, we will go to our first insert, and that is by our State House correspondent, Musbah Danwahab, who gives us a chronology of activities so far in the first 100 days of the current administration.
He sought, he got it, and said yes to the mandate. In a social contract, Bola Tinubu volunteered to fulfill the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians. The experienced administrator at sub-national level came prepared for a greater challenge with his action plan, which has been the guiding principles of his policies and programs at the center. The journey to imbue the economy with new life began almost immediately with a popular pronouncement on fuel subsidy removal.
The fuel subsidy is gone.
We even congratulated him on removal of subsidy. It's going to be better for everybody. There will be more money now to put into education, into health, infrastructure and other areas.
Laudable as it is, that decision came with some hard consequences on Nigerians.
Can we continue to service external debts with over 90% of our revenue? It's a path to destruction. We cannot continue that. We have to make hard decisions.
But then, the seasoned accountants apparently had his calculations with responsive plans to support the most vulnerable. First in the plan was the declaration of state of emergency on food security to address all matters relating to food and water availability and affordability, while inauguration of the National Economic Council also saw the pronouncement of palliative measures to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal.
Council also agreed that all the 3 tiers of government must do certain things, must begin to be, responsive to the mood of the nation, to the sufferings of the people, and try to do something to ameliorate the impacts.
The administration also demonstrated intent to sanitize the nation's financial and business environments with the appointment of a chief executive officer of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, Jim Obazi, as special investigator, while Godwin Emefiele was suspended as CBN governor to allow proper investigation into the activities of the Apex Bank. In an irony against the expectations of many Nigerians, Tinubu's administration commenced the process toward reduction of tax burden on businesses with the inauguration of Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, led by a renowned expert in tax matters, Taiwo Oyedele. The committee is also expected to reshape the revenue generation strategy of the country.
Our aim is to transform the tax system to support sustainable development, while at the same time achieving a minimum of 18% tax to GDP ratio within the next 3 years.
Consistently, President Tinubu has set his focus on exploring all means to create more wealth for the country, ready to tap economic opportunities in many sectors. This he has demonstrated with the creation of ministries of arts, culture and creative economy, marine and blue economy, communications, innovation and digital economy. They are all in addition to the traditional ministries of finance, budget and economic planning, as well as industry, trade and investments.
Poverty is not a shameful thing, but not acceptable. We must banish it.
The private sector is encouraged with the bold decisions President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has taken, and we hope that in the fullness of time, Nigerians will benefit from it, because it's all about Nigerian people, it's all about youth.
To deliver these 1,460-day mandates, 100 days are gone as an ankle dipped in the pond, and now with the 45 ministers inaugurated into the Federal Executive Council, Nigerians, and indeed the world, are waiting to see how successful the current administration will be in the actual swim ahead in the next 1,360 days.
We will deliver for Nigeria.
From the State House, Musbau and Wahab, NTA News.
Thank you, Musbau, for that report. Like I said earlier, we are being joined by Ahmed Sajo, our public affairs analyst. 100 days in the life of an administration, perhaps a lot of people will say is minute, but have the blocks or the foundation been laid for the concept discussed from the podium that Nigerians are expecting?
Well, thank you very much. I think let's look at what the program says, bold steps. Bold steps are actually very hard steps. Hard steps are very difficult steps. Difficult steps are very painful steps. So definitely there were bold steps that were taken. And like expected, those bold steps have resulted in some hardships, difficulties, and pain, you know. But they are very, very, very necessary steps. And I must tell you that one of the most enduring, legacies of this administration in the last 100 days is that we no longer, govern this country through borrowing, no debts. We have almost, done away with borrowing to service governance, because that was a trap. That was a danger, a looming danger. We will reach a point where we will not be able to borrow again, and the country will go down on its knees. So it was a very bold step to have taken measures that will stop us from running the government through borrowing. And that included, of course, naturally, the removal of fuel subsidy, which was in actual fact, benefiting just a tiny minority of people in the fullness of it, while creating conditions that could impoverish people irreversibly in the future if it was not stopped at that point in time. I also feel that it was a very bold step to say, look, this system of some people collecting dollar at 400 naira to a dollar and selling it in the black market and making money without actually, putting any benefit to the economy should stop. It was also a very bold step. But those bold steps, even though they were very well received by the business community, they almost instantly showed up the all share index in the stock market to a level that had not been seen for a very long time. But they were painful to the general public. And so people are just measuring on the pain without necessarily looking at the long-term benefit. And the long-term benefit are going to be very many. It's also a very bold step by the government to restructure the service sector itself, to create new departments of government that will give, that will create some level of understanding of the manner governance is gone. In the past, we used to have a very behemoth Ministry of Transport, for example, that covers aviation, covers land transport, covers maritime transport, and it was creating so much inefficiency because sometimes focus is on one as against the other. Sometimes the full potentials of one is not exploited appropriately. So now that we have, for example, a marine and blue economy. Blue economy is a whole economy of its own that we can exploit to the maximum. We now have aviation and airspace development. We have, it's in steps. So there are areas that we have really made some bold steps that will change the perception. I like the idea of returning, for example, a coordinating minister of the economy. The economy needs to be coordinated. We cannot run the economy the way we had run it in the past, that everyone was doing what they wanted within an economy that is monolithic. It's our own economy. It's not like we are different entities and different countries, and then there are competitions among the various segments. No, the economy needs to be coordinated, and so whatever the central bank is doing, the Ministry of Finance should know. Whatever the Ministry of Industry is doing, the Ministry, the customs should know. So we need to coordinate these things so that they work together. I'm also thrilled by the fact that we're going to coordinate health and human development. Human development, when you talk about, say, humanitarian, and you do not have a data bank on how to determine who are supposed beneficiaries, or that you do not look at it as there's a synergy between people's health, people's well-being, and even to a large extent, people's education. All of these things are connected. If you do not coordinate them and work in a manner that makes it useful and valuable to the people, you are not achieving the results. So I think the bold steps we have taken are bold steps that will definitely, they are hard, they are difficult, but in the end, they will bring ease and they will make the country better. And I must confess that we are seeing the benefits in revenue generation. We're seeing the benefits in the savings that government is making in some certain key areas, and those savings are benefiting our people, or they will benefit our people in the long run, even if in the short run there may be some hardships.
I wanted you to make a full, first, intervention on the program in terms of the overall perspective. But I need you to bring something on board as well. Perhaps it was not part of, the documents displayed and, agree with Nigerians. But just within the first month of the administration, there was also a task added from the subcontinent, the ECOWAS chairmanship of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government. And just following it very closely was the, upheaval across the border that needed also to be addressed. While that was happening, of course, the government had to also get its cabinet in position and all that. Have we been able to go through this labyrinth of administrative expectations with, the focus and nimble feet that we needed to?
I think I must be very honest with you. Yes, we have taken very bold steps in those directions as well, but you must understand that at the time President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was made the chair of the Authority of Heads of State of ECOWAS, he was also in the process of constructing his own administration. At that time, we were working towards having our own ministers. And quite a number of people saw it as a distraction. But it was also a recognition of the central role Nigeria plays in at least the West African sub-region, if not the African continent. So it came to us as an added advantage that just when we are trying to reconstruct ourselves as a nation, reconstruct our government structures so as to deliver to our own people, the West African sub-region also, imposed on us some added responsibility of reconstructing how the sub-region itself should go. Unfortunately, as Bola Ahmed Tinubu became the leader of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of States, there was a military intervention in our neighbors, Niger. And that took a whole lot of attention and discussion. Of course, naturally, that came after a very powerful speech President Tinubu made at the ECOWAS summit, where he said the ECOWAS will no longer accept military change of government. So it was like a direct affront. Okay, you said you don't want coups, we have done the coup. What happens? And that took a whole lot of our attention as a people. But it did not derail the process of constructing our own government. We had our own ministers, their names submitted, they were screened, and at the end of the day, the government itself was put in place. And the ministers were given portfolios, and we're seeing them, some of them have hit the ground, not just running, but even flying. Some of them are doing, walking, round.
If they are flying, they have not hit the ground at all. That means they just started flying because they are in the air.
They are moving very fast to make sure that they meet up with the expectations of Nigerians. And like you said at the beginning, honestly, there's a huge quantum of expectations. Whether we like it or not, there's a huge quantum of expectations. And the 8-point agenda in its totality is geared towards meeting those expectations. Food insecurity is key. All the problems we are facing today in Nigeria had paled compared to the crisis in the food and nutrition sector. We need to address that urgently, and the government is doing everything possible, including distribution of palliatives. We also believe that there are other things that we need to do urgently to meet up with the expectations of the people in the short term. But in the long term, the policies, the bold steps that have been taken will be beneficial to Nigerians and to Nigeria. And let me tell you, no matter how much we want to lead ECOWAS, we need to put our feet firmly on ground and make our country strong enough to be the fulcrum upon which we stand to propel the progress in the West African sub-region.
All right, thank you very much. My correspondents have been waiting, chomping at the bit to be a part of this discussion. Guys, time to invite you in. I'll start with Benny, the man who minds the business for the network. Now, this time, you would mind this business with me, and we'll look at the past 100 days in terms of the early interventions. Let's, perhaps start with some of the discussions and conversations around growing the economy, which has been a big part, of the campaign document. What are the interventions you've seen so far? I wouldn't ask if you are enthused, but look at it in terms of the impact on that sector, and let me see what is in your case file.
Okay, thank you, Fisayo. Good to be here. The present administration actually hit the ground running, and the president himself took along with him on that race issues of monetary policy as well as the fiscal policy. Like it was so very clear at his inauguration, his speech, he clearly mentioned the fact that interest rates were actually high and the poor needed to breathe. That ushered in an intention to reform the fiscal side of the economy, talking about taxes, talking about government spending, and talking about how to attract investment. And on the monetary side, the issues around the currency swap then was an issue. If you watch the campaigns down to the inauguration, there was scarcity of cash. He said that had to stop. And in doing so, he actually announced on that very day that both the old Naira and the new Naira were going to subsist as legal tender. And moving on, he talked about the unification of the exchange rate, where we had officially 420 to 424 Naira at the official rate, while at the black market on the street it was about 700 to 740 Naira. He said that must stop. And we saw that immediately in June, the CBN announcing the unification of the exchange rate, throwing it to the market, willing buyer, willing seller, saying the CBN is no longer responsible for regulating how the exchange rate goes. And today we have that exchange rate going between 755 up to 930. A lot might say this is not good for business, but if you look at it on the flip side, you'll understand the fact that this is what investors want. When they invest in your country, they should be able to repatriate their money. So we saw that happening almost immediately. Then again, the president went ahead in the same month to sign the executive orders, 4 of them, which had to do with reducing taxes or suspending the Finance Act 2023, which introduced actually new taxes, talking about the telecom taxes, talking about tax on manufactured products, food commodities, and all of that. For that, the president feels, let us grow businesses. Let the businesses grow first to fruition before taxes are introduced. And in furtherance to that, the president went ahead in the month of July, late July to August, to inaugurate the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, where he brought in a tax expert talking about Taiwo Oyedele to chair that.
But let me let you hold your thoughts, because we could perhaps color these discussions by perhaps bringing in some of the things you have spoken about. Of course, the men to convert concepts to actualities have been vetted, appointed, and given portfolios. And the Minister of Finance is the coordinating Minister of the Economy, talking about Mr. Wale Edu, and he shared his thoughts on growing the economy and investment in this clip.
Last time, when the economy was stable, when it was growing, when inflation was low, when the exchange rate was stable, and when interest rates were affordable, that period was about a decade ago. Growth was above 6% around 2013, 2014. And it was because from around 2010, there was a commodity boom worldwide. Oil prices were high, volumes were high. Nigeria earned, and the government earned into its coffers, over $80 billion per annum, compared to a figure now of around $25 billion. So you can see the difference. And what that points to is that there was a time when government had enough foreign exchange, it had enough Naira revenue to meet its obligations and to provide the funding for growth of the economy. It had enough foreign exchange such that when people came in to invest and they needed to import raw materials, to import machinery, government could provide the wherewithal. And so what that points to is that we have a situation where if government doesn't have the money, it needs to facilitate and allow private funding, other sources of funding, such as foreign direct investment, domestic investment by Nigerians in all areas. And we saw some of that in Lagos when Mr. President was governor of Lagos. He opened up the power sector to private investment, the road sector to private investment, infrastructure, waste management, even cemeteries to private investment, because government didn't have the funds and there were those who are willing and able to provide jobs and grow the economy by making those investments. So that is a pointer to the fundamentals of the president's strategy, private investment, and worldwide there are huge flows of foreign direct investment once you give investors the right conditions.
The coordinating minister of the economy, Mr. Wale Edun, sharing his thought there. Benny Adams, business correspondent, is still here. He was talking about, when now that the tank is no longer full and we have to look at other sources. Private initiatives, talking about private investment is one of the areas the minister is looking at and the current administration is looking at. Benny, are there indications or are there, perhaps, early indications of foreign direct investment in terms of people getting a buy? I mean, people giving us a buy-in into some of these concepts shared?
Well, it's something that is ongoing and we can see the fruits. It started from the very first day, from the inauguration day, when the president himself mentioned that investors, those issues inhibiting investment will be addressed and the business environment will be made much more conducive. Immediately after that, we saw stocks go up more than ever. That is an indication that if the exchange rate is unified, there is a stable currency regime. That alone is a pointer to attract investment into the country. And another way is the issue of tax reforms that is actually ongoing at present. The government is looking at reducing. We have up to like 40, 65 to 74 different taxes and levies and dues that are inhibiting businesses in Nigeria. That is the findings of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. And they are trying to streamline it to just 10. Instead of introducing more taxes, the coordinating minister of the economy believes if there is efficient receipt of this tax, then there is no need to think about increasing taxes. And that they want to do through encouraging people to pay their taxes by showing Nigerians what they do with their money when they pay their taxes. And to attract Nigerians to getting to pay this tax voluntarily, they are beginning to reduce the burden on businesses to say, let's give you some incentives to grow your business so that you become much more productive to the point that taxes can be able to deduce from you and willingly you pay these taxes. Some of these taxes are bank charges. Some of these taxes are also, like the committee is also considering reducing VAT on some consumables. VAT is a consumption tax, and they're talking about, in the oil and gas, they're talking about removing VAT for diesel and all of that. These are some of the incentives that are attracting people in the real sector of production, real sector of manufacturing, where you power your systems, you power your generators at low cost to help you to reduce your production costs. That is also one aspect they are looking at. Then in the overall, on the long run, they are looking at rewriting the national tax policy, which the last time we had a review on was 2017. There they want to look at those taxes that are actually inhibiting production. And when that is looked at, I tell you, from what we have been promised, the business environment will be much, much friendlier, and that will attract foreign direct investment. And also, like the coordinating minister of the economy said, there's a lot of money out there, both foreign direct investment and domestic investment. Like he rightly said a few days ago, talking about Wale Edu, he said there is a lot of money lying down in domiciliary accounts. So there is need to get the owners of this money to plow these monies back into the system. And government does that through different means, talking about selling savings, bonds, and national treasury bills, and also creating that enabling environment to say, okay, by the time you invest, when you're ready to take your investment, it is there for you.
Thank you, Benny. Let's hear from the horse's mouth again. Mr. Wale Edun, this time talking about revenue generation. Can we hear the coordinating minister of the economy speak on revenue generation? All right, while we get that material ready, we move on to other issues. You mentioned the expert brought in talking about Taiwo Yedili on incentives and tax regime. But let's take that clip on revenue generation. We'll come back and discuss some more.
To get to where Mr. President is going to take us, the key is to increase revenues so that government has enough funding to carry out its obligations and to stabilize the economy as a whole. On the one hand, it is by increasing tax revenue, not by increasing taxes necessarily, but by bringing greater efficiency. We have with us the chairman of the Tax Reform Committee, and the aim is to bring greater efficiency, to cut leakages, and to maximize the legitimate revenue that should come to government. Likewise, in order to gain and build public trust, there will be emphasis on efficiency in government expenditure, and similarly, effective debt management, so that borrowing has linked to it the return on investment. You borrow and you will see the cash flow that will repay that borrowing. Overall, I would say Mr. President is going to deliver a better life to Nigerians by encouraging investment that increases productivity, that grows the economy, and thereby creates jobs and reduces poverty.
Talking about taxes and the task before the current administration, we'll take yet another clip, this time from the committee themselves, headed by Mr. Taiwo Yedili. He's speaking about incentives and the tax regime being introduced. Let's take that report.
When you don't look at your incentives regime, it can get to a point where it becomes a distortion for economic growth, because some people benefit, others don't, and they operate in the same sector, so they cannot compete. You also have to think about it from the point of view of cost benefits. As a country, if we are giving away 1 naira, we need to be able to convince ourselves that the benefits we are getting is more than 1 naira. Otherwise, that is no longer an incentive for the economy, but for some individuals. If you look at our tax expenditure report over the past 3-4 years, on the average, we're giving away around 6 trillion naira per annum. That's significant. What we have not been measuring enough is the benefit we are getting from that. So I can confirm to you, as part of the mandate given to us by Mr. President, is to look at the incentive regime in Nigeria, so we can, based on data and evidence, design what is appropriate for us as a country in terms of what we want to drive. So those incentives will be targeted, they will be data-driven, evidence-based, and in most cases we have sunset clauses, so they don't last forever, and we only find out after losing so much money. We think that what is more pressing and even more important than giving incentives is removing disincentives. And the good thing about removing disincentives is it doesn't cost government money, right? And then it stimulates the economy and it helps us to create wealth and growth that is inclusive. The other aspect of what we are working on, if you recall, the mandates given to us are divided into 3 broad pillars. One of it is fiscal governance. The second pillar that we have is revenue transformation. Beyond taxes, even non-tax revenue, how can you optimize it? And Mr. President has said over the next, in the next 3 years, we want to get to about 18% tax to GDP ratio. And on the other hand, we want to reduce the number of taxes that Nigerians pay. So that appears like a contradiction. How do you remove taxes and you collect more? But it's easy to explain because we know where the gaps are. The estimated tax gap, which is what you should collect today, if people should pay the right amount of taxes, is in the region of 20 trillion naira. To close that gap, like the Honorable Minister has said, you rely on automation and the efficiency of collection, including harmonization of how those taxes are collected. The other thing is, if you also consider the incentive rationalization, maybe it's not 6 trillion we should be giving away, maybe it's 2. And those 2 that you give away must be targeted at the people that need them the most. You can also close the tax gap from that point of view. And the one that is even more interesting that we should all be excited about is the plan to increase tax revenue by growing the economy. So if you allow people to be prosperous and businesses to thrive, then you make money from revenue naturally. That's why Mr. President said we are not taxing seed, we will tax fruits. And what that also means is in a country like Nigeria where the level of tax compliance is relatively low than it needs to be, you then plan for a tax yield where the increase in your tax and non-tax revenue is growing faster than the economy itself. And that's where you get all of that from. So the last pillar to that, which I've been speaking to already, is to facilitate economic growth and inclusive development. So we're looking at the impediments to doing business. Whether you're a small business, whether you're a large business, whether you're multinational or domestic, we want to be the destination for all investors. Big, small, medium, all sizes, so long as what you're doing is legitimate. And we don't want government to come in your way of doing that business and thriving. We want Nigerian companies and businesses to become global. And you may even find that some of them can easily earn a lot of foreign exchange, more than the amount of money we are making from crude oil. That is the aspiration.
Mr. Ojidele sharing his thoughts, very soft-spoken but very convincing. If you ask me on some of these issues, I saw my guest, Mr. Ahmed Sajo, nodding, but we'll come to you very shortly. Let me just bring in a few of my correspondents now. We have Benny Adams still in the studio, but when we talk about a state that has been used to perhaps fertilize some of these ideas in the past, that is Lagos State. Our correspondent Michael Olaleye is there standing by to also give us some experiences from there. Earlier in our discussion, my guest Ahmed Sajo indeed say that I was excited by the unbundling of the transportation sector, talking about the introduction of marine, blue economy and all that. First, Michael, are you equally excited about some of these developments, and how has that cascaded down to your zone that is one of the direct beneficiaries of this unbundling, and perhaps we will begin to see the fruits of this more in terms of the performances of this sector, and perhaps seeing bigger involvement of Nigerians and businesses grow in the sectors that have just been introduced with new supervisors?
Thank you, Fesayo, and thank you for having me on this platform. Let me take you back to 2015 when the Ministry of Transportation Then under the Ministry of Transportation, we have the maritime, the aviation. If you observe then, most of the concentration in the sector was basically on rail transportation. Because when you have agencies or sectors being put together under a particular platform, to drive growth, to drive expansion will be very limited. Now, fast forward to 2019, when we have the Ministry of Aviation, many development emanated from that introduction. A good example is the establishment of special economic zone in the aviation sector. I mean, the airports, majorly the international airports, were now assumed the role of special economic zones, enjoying the benefits we have in free zones and free economic zones. That's as a result, we're able to get to that point because of the fact that then in 2019, the Ministry of Aviation was pulled out from the Ministry of Transportation. At that time, ability to identify those areas of growth was very visible. Now, another gains that led to is the bringing on board of incentive for the aviation industry. A good instance is for zero, if you are importing an aircraft, you have what I would call zero duty. New aircraft, if you are getting a new aircraft. Then also it goes to the MRO, that's maintenance, repairs, and operations in that industry like that. For the blue economy, I think this is an opportunity. And why I'm so excited about this the development is that it's an opportunity to zoom in, to look in very well critically into the blue economy sector, the marine sector, and see areas of development that can be harnessed. A good instance, let me give you a very good example. Now, the president, by establishing the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, is telling us that for someone living in Lagos, you don't need to go through the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway before you travel to Ondo State. Ondo State is right at our backyard here. That in such doing, we'll see investments in interstate water transportation. People will come with investment in that aspect. Another one which I want you to focus here is what we call developing Nigerian capacity to grow the shipping business by encouraging Nigerians to own cargoes, to own ship vessels. And that has already started at the close of the last administration, in which the government now giving a go-ahead for the disbursement of what they call the Cabotage Vessel Financing Fund to encourage Nigerians, indigenous people, Nigerians, to dominate the shipping business. Now, before then, what you have in the industry now is that most of the ships are owned by foreigners, limiting Nigerians to contribute meaningfully and even grow our GDP. So with that's coming on board, what the government is telling us is they want individuals to own ships. They want Nigerians. They want Nigerian ships that are flying the Nigerian flag to be much on our waterways, even going outside the country. You know, by then you'll be expanding opportunity. You've been giving more job to people. Then Nigeria will be able to even develop a seafarer ability. There's a program which they call the National Seafarers Development Program, in which we export foreigners. We export seafarers. We take them overseas to train. But after the training abroad, they find it difficult to have sea time, being attached to vessels. But when we have ships, vessels that are flying Nigerian flags, when we have ships that are being owned by Nigerians, then it will enable us to put some of these seafarers on those vessels. We will be earning foreign exchange by that. Another aspect which people are not really pay attention to, which I would like to stress here, is the marine life. I was in Norway in May, and what I observed is that if you remove ICT and energy, one particular aspect of the economy, and one particular aspect that drives Norway economy is the marine life. Developing people's capacity to export fishes and marine creatures that will grow the economy, that will make people participate even down. There are various value chain. Another observation is people investing in what they call seaweed you know, seaweed that we just see, people developing capacity in that because they are nutritious. You understand? Then there is also the issue of what I call the energy sector. One of the goals, the reason why the blue economy becomes pronounced is because the global community is looking at a way in which we'll have what we call sustainable shipping around the world, emphasizing going greener. And when we start expanding this sector of the economy, I mean the blue economy, then we have people investing in energy, using a lot of things that Nigeria is going to benefit in that aspect of Fisayo. There are many, but let me just hold my thought at this point, Fisayo.
Yes, I wanted you to land on some of you know, your interventions and your you know, comments on the blue economy and the in-depth knowledge you have added to our panel has made me go blue with envy. But let me just quickly get Benny in to perhaps you know, add some spice to what you know, Michael has been talking about. What we need is more naira and kobo, isn't it, Benny?
Sure.
And if what would be, for instance, your expectations from this new ministry that has just come on stream in terms of what it could add to our GDP and perhaps even the you know, the domestic sector and the capacity that could be coming on board as well?
Just like Michael mentioned, it is an aspect that is receiving the attention and that is needed, and there's so much to gain from that sector. He highlighted some of it, but all of it boils down to attracting investment. Before you get investors to come into such a sector to invest massively their resources, you need to make the environment much more conducive, and that's what the present administration is doing through the reforms we are having in the tax regime, where we have collection of taxes. Government is now saying, why have multiple agencies? Up to like 63 government agencies are given revenue targets to meet either quarterly or yearly. Now government is saying, let's streamline this collection to one central agency, which is the Federal Inland Revenue Service, where you have collection of taxes has been an issue. Yes, not maximally, like Oyedele said earlier on, we have a tax gap of 20 trillion naira annually. That is huge. And you have FIRS having a massive collection of a little above 10 trillion naira, which is the highest so far in the history of revenue collection since the establishment of FIRS. But the present administration is saying that is a little bit abysmal compared to the potential in this particular sector. So government is saying, let's cut out cost of collection of these taxes for customs, take care of our borders, facilitate trade. For NCC, yes, regulate the industry, the telecom industry. There's a whole lot that is happening there, but allow other people to collect your tax on your behalf. With that, there will be efficiency in getting money for government to get to spend in handling its business. And when you plow this money back into the systems, that's why you have incentives. Though, like you had, incentives should be checked. It should be research-based. It should be data-based. It should be given to those who actually deserve it, and not issue of friends and family. And also extending taxes to luxury goods, luxury lifestyles. We have a lot of people who are on tax, and they highly placed. Permit me to say this, some don't pay what they are due. Take, for instance, a civil servant just pay the personal income tax, whereas some of us have businesses, kekena, taxes here and there. Nobody's taxing you. And this reform is saying, let's have central data where whatever transaction I make, it pops up on a computer where that transaction will be linked to me, and I'll be required to pay a certain amount of tax. That is taxing those who should be taxed and not taxing those who are trying to survive in these businesses. So you're talking about the blue economy, talking about the money economy, talking about the banking sector. All of that, these reforms, at the end of the day, we are going to see positive outcomes in these areas, hopefully. We are beginning to see some already with the stock market gaining, the bosses we're going green investments is being increased in that light, and you have foreign direct investment inflows coming into this country to invest in key sectors. And government is saying, we're going to keep aside borrowing. By the time we invest in particularly a particular infrastructure, take for instance the rail system we have. It is something that we see on ground. It is something that is improving transportation. It is something that is improving the economy. And people are patronizing this mode of transportation and they are paying for it. So with that, you are also getting revenues into the system.
Thank you very much, Benny, for this intervention. We'll be back to you in the course of the program. Michael, too, please stand by before we round off. But let me come back to my guest, Ahmed Sajo. You were nodding excitedly when Taiwo Yedele and the coordinating minister of the economy, Waledun, was speaking on the concepts guiding, the revenue generation base and trying to, improve our fortunes in the economic sector. So let's, look at some of the things they spoke to and what tickled your fancy.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we are going back to where we should be. Government is an enabler. Government is to create an enabling environment for society to thrive. That includes our economy and all aspects of society. What has been happening in the past is that we were eating the seeds because we lack the patience to wait for the harvest. And in the process, we were moving in the direction of ending up without any harvest at all. Because when you eat the seeds, what then do you plant to harvest? So this is, if you notice, what they were talking about is that, look, government will be an enabler. Government will enable the system plant its own seed, nurture the seeds, create a condition that will make the harvest bountiful. Then and only then are we going to enjoy. If you note, the tax reform committee was talking about incentives and disincentives. You add incentives to tax collection and you remove disincentives from tax collection. The two, like he said, may sound contradictory, but they are not. They are actually what government should do. Create incentives that will make it possible for people to pay their taxes as an obligation. Remove these incentives that make people not to want to pay their taxes. Or create incentives for the people that collect the taxes so as to be efficient in collection. Remove these incentives that make it impossible for them to collect the taxes faithfully.
All right,
that's one aspect.
Okay,
let me tell you the other aspect that I was very excited about. I was very excited in the fact that there is going to be tax reform and that we are going to look at areas that have not been taxed properly. And I give you two examples. You find one person, he has 100 houses in Nigeria. Because those properties are not taxed, you can own as many houses as you can. And you keep those houses empty. You don't even make it possible for people to rent those houses or to enter and live in those houses. Because they are not taxed. You have somebody will park about 30 to 40, 50 cars in his house. He can only ride one car at a time. And maybe, he allows his children to ride 2 or 3 more cars. But the remaining cars are their waste. Because they are not an investment. They are not yielding any value to the economy or to the people of this country. And because they are not taxed, he can accumulate them and keep them and keep them. There are many things we accumulate and keep in this country that we don't actually need. But because those properties are not taxed, we tend to continue to acquire them and keep them. And there are estates in this Abuja that have been there for the past 10, 20 years, only for rodents, lizards, and others that live there, because they are too expensive for us to rent, and because they are not taxed, the owners don't see any loss in keeping them there, because value of property just appreciates. But if we begin to tax property, we will harvest bountifully from it, and people will begin to become reasonable and responsible in the manner in which they accumulate the taxes. Another thing we need to do is the ostentatious lifestyle of the ruling elite. That too must be taxed. That too must be curtailed. You cannot be asking people, ordinary people, to make sacrifices. You cannot be asking ordinary people to tighten their belt. You cannot be asking ordinary people to understand with government when you who is at the forefront of making government function and not living according to those values. You're not tightening your belt. You are living a very lavish lifestyle, and you put it on television and on social media. It actually infuriates the very ordinary people that you think you want to get their buy-in in moving the economy forward. So government needs to be an enabler in the sense of providing incentives for the economy to grow, for investors to come in, for jobs to be created. But government must also regulate the way we live our lives so that the wastes that we see all around us are curtailed and controlled. So people know that, look, when I acquire property, it is for a purpose. It's not for me to just display that I have property and stop people from benefiting from those property. Everything that is owned by everybody in this country, it actually belongs to the country. It belongs to the people of the country. No matter how much you want to protect private ownership of property, you have to understand that private ownership or private lifestyles are actually within the context of the entire country. We all contribute to protecting those private property. We contribute to making government function so that we have an orderly society where owners of these private properties will continue to own those private properties. So they must also have some level of responsibility in ensuring that what we're doing, what benefits the entire society should also receive some contributions from those that own those things. So I am thrilled actually with the fact that we will expand our tax net, we will block leakages, we'll increase incentives for tax payment, and we will remove these incentives. Take, for example, and I say it anywhere, an ordinary businessman in the streets with a small shop will have to contend with about local government taxation, state government, fire service, water corporation. He will pay tax to federal agencies. About 20, 40, 50 agencies will go and meet one person to say he will pay tax. What is he paying all this tax for? What happens when there is fire? When there is fire outbreak in most of the states of this country, you call the fire service, they don't attend, they don't come because they don't have the facilities to go and help you out. But you must pay fire service tax every month. What are you paying that tax for? So we need to value for money. That's what the tax reform committee said, that there has to be value. That if you attach, and the coordinating minister also said so, if you attach value to what people are paying, people will have more incentives to pay.
Thank you very much, Amasa Joe, for that passion. Let me quickly tell you, of course, if you're just joining us, that you're watching a special broadcast on the 100 days in the office of the current administration in terms of concepts, actualities, and realities. And my correspondents are still in the studio. Benny Adams has been robust in his interventions, but I have my super subs waiting and ready and willing to come in very shortly, talking about Ilyasu Yakubu and defense correspondent Ajah to Tijani. Guys, just hold on for me for a bit before I sign you in, because Michael Olale, for your final interventions on your sector, talking about taxes and of course blue economy, and in the next few days or months, perhaps at the close of the year, what are we expecting from those sectors based on the interventions we have seen so far?
Thank you, Fisayo. The one thing that is crucial here is that in terms of expanding the scope of the blue economy to deliver expected results, we must be looking at expanding the Nigeria, our fleet, that is our ships and vessels. And one of the way of achieving that is the cabotage vessel financing fund. Now, in few months, with the ministry coming on board now, the ministry coming on board, we are very sure we fast track the process of completing that plan. What is delaying the disbursement of that particular fund, talking about the CVFF fund, is the interest rate. The ship owners association, they are clamoring for a single digit, which the coordinating agency, the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, is effectively working towards that. I guess if with all that put together, before in 2, 3, 4 months, we should be seeing dividends from that aspect, and there should be support for also support for trawlers. Trawler owners that have trawlers that go fishing on waters, in order to ensure that we're able to have a strong capacity to export our shrimps. Our shrimps are being accepted in America, a very viable market. We should be able to expand all these and be able to make a lot of money. In terms of waiver, for now, if you are going to import a new vessel into the country, a new one, you pay zero imports. I mean, in terms of the duty is zero, you don't need to pay anything. Then there is also the incentive for people that want to import spare parts. You understand? Want to export spare parts of vessels, and if that even exists in the aviation industry. I think with all this put together, we should be having a very solid platform of establishing, of growing this particular sector. That we should talk about developing capacity. Institutions, the last time I was at the University of Lagos, they're already talking about the marine engineering, having courses in marine engineering that will complement this particular. There are fragments, there are different isolated interventions or initiative targeted at developing the blue economy. But with a ministry coming on board, I'm very sure we should be able to harvest this, seeing them in physical, making them seen. Is not just by talking about them. You know, globally, the sector, the blue economy industry, sector has the capacity of generating $1.5 trillion into the global economy. Now, Nigeria, if we start with the support being given by this present administration, if we start injecting all that into all this, and by the vigor everybody is coming on board to see that these work adequately, I think it should be able to increase the GDP of the sector to the national economy. The last time we checked, I think in 2019, the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency projected that the sector should be able to contribute 10% to the GDP, and that then doesn't have a sector of its own. All this intervention has not started coming on board. Now, with this intervention government is looking towards, I think we should be having we should go further up. We're talking about 15 for a start. You know, like I said earlier, this particular sector of the blue economy constitutes the larger contributor to the GDP of some countries in Europe. I think we should be able to do better, because we already have the capacity being operated in isolation, in fragments. But now the ministry should be able to put all this, coordinate them together, and make them drive positive change. There was a time I had an interaction with an expert also. He was talking about having a maritime development bank to support initiative, to encourage investors. You know, if you have a maritime development bank, just like we have as the normal Bank of Industry, they will support small business initiative in that sector. I told you about some young girls, ladies I met in Europe that they are into the production of seaweeds. These are weeds that you obtain at the river banks. You just put them together. It's being packaged. So if we have that Bank of Industry, they can equally, and they can intervene in such aspects, giving soft loan to people to venture into the business. Then there is also the aspect of, you know, our waterways people are just fishing unregulated. These are the aspects government should be able to close down to ensure that people contribute, to ensure that the sector deliver the expected gain. Fisayo.
Riverine area, don't close down our fishing this time, but let me quickly say that your concepts and ideas and observations successfully have the cargo of ideas have reached the shore. Thank you so much, Michael Olale from Lagos, and Benny Adams. I would want you to wrap up this part of our business discussion before we come and close shop later on in the program. The key words from Taiwo Idele was tax the fruit, not the seed. What are some of the things that we used to do in the past that we will no longer be doing, and in a few short moments or months we would begin to see the dividends?
Okay, thank you, Fisayo. To say the least, issues aside tax revenues, which will increase revenue for government spending, another aspect is availability of foreign exchange. And we've had a few days ago from the NNPC CEO talking about Mele Kyari saying, with much security that we're having in the Niger Delta region, we're expecting more crude oil production, which means more sales for Nigeria. And with more sales, we are talking about getting much more foreign exchange. And when this foreign exchange is available, the prices in the market, talking about the exchange rate between the naira and the dollar, will stabilize further. And when it stabilizes, you have small or medium scale manufacturers being able to access this forex, go to buy machinery, then get into production. When there is production, there is more for sufficiency in country as well as exports. And when you export again, when you export, you get foreign exchange. And talking about exports, the issue has been exporting raw materials, but now there is a new consciousness to the fact that when you add value, no matter how little that value is, you get premium for that particular product. So when we have more people in the real sector of production having access to capital, which is part of the 8-point agenda of the present administration, access to capital, then production will be increased. And another way production can also be increased is when you have a cheaper lending rate, talking about the borrowing rate from central bank or any development agency. Well, development agencies in Nigeria like Bank of Industry and the Nexim Bank will actually give you money at single-digit interest rate. But when you go out there, particularly to the commercial deposit banks, you get at a double digit. It's because of the cost of lending. If that is also looked into, then production will be more and the economy will stabilize better. And that is one promise that the president has promised, and we're beginning to see that in effect already.
Thank you very much, Benny Adams. We'll be back to you before we close shop. But we'll move to another segment, something that perhaps is a clear and present danger that we've seen in, recent time. There's an albatross on the nation's neck over the past decade, and that is this increasing, humanitarian challenges. First of all, we have people, a lot of Nigerians, living below the poverty line as a result of conflict, desertification, and lack of opportunities. This group, and of course internal displacement. This group has been growing ever steadily for over a decade, and it is a challenge and that the nation is currently confronting. We have the first marches from areas of habitation to new areas. Nigerians who have more or less become refugees in their own nation as a result that is not, as a result of what is not really the fault of their making, and plans to return hope is there. So let's listen to the new minister, Betta Edu, on the renewed hope agenda in this direction.
The president of our country, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he has an agenda, and the agenda is simple: renew the hopes of Nigerians. It's that easy. Renew the hopes of Nigerians. There's a whole lot of work to be done. I've taken my time over a few days to go through some data. So I've seen that we have about 136 million poor Nigerians. Let's assume in all honesty that the data we have is correct, that we have 200 million Nigerians, which I think they are more than that. We're more than that. 136 million is alarming and is completely unacceptable to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and dear President. we need to bring smiles back to the faces of Nigerians. And I'm not saying data, I'm not saying numbers, I'm referring to people. At all costs, Nigerians must smile again. We must get down to every single spot in this country and reach those who are underserved, those who are poor, those who need a renewed hope. We're not going to play games. We're going to increase our efforts. We're going to be very sincere, transparent, and accountable. It's not secret business. If we're spending 1 naira it is. If we're spending 10 billion it is. And they must be able to feel the results of that expenditure.
Dr. Betta Edu, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, and poverty alleviation, speaking about the concepts of renewed hope to a sector in dire need of hope. Our guest, Ahmed Sajo, is from a region that has been confronting the effects of outlawry, non-state actors bent on carnage for over a decade. And you are from communities that have been devastated, leading to forced marches away from those communities. It is an albatross on our very necks at this time. That has cascaded into other, or snowballed into other developments in parts across the country as well. But it was the Northeast that first perhaps gave us, these alarming statistics. Now look at in observing, perhaps, assessing some of the expectations from that sector and the realities on ground. What will be your first intervention in this segment?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, the danger with the poverty levels in Nigeria is that the poverty level is multidimensional. If you had just poverty of lack of money, that is a little bit easier to address, but it's multidimensional. There are areas that there's poverty of lack of nutrition, there's poverty lack of water, there's poverty of lack of gainful employment, there's poverty due to, in fact, to the extent that even lack of toilets in this country, resulting in open defecation and pollution of the environment. The connect between a polluted environment and bad water, which results in sickness, as a result of all of these things. So our poverty level is multidimensional, but that does not mean that it's a hopeless situation. And I give you an example. When I was made the chairman of the Durable Solutions Committee of Adamawa State, we had 26 IDP camps. And those IDPs were actually looking very hopeless, sitting down in the camps and waiting for people to come and throw some food at them. And I took it upon myself to, for example, visit the IDP camps, I'd interface with them and understand their situations, and I began to enlighten them on the fact that they could be productive. And once they started productive engagement, staying inside the camp and waiting for food became, something they didn't want any longer. And by the time we left 4 years after, we only left 4 IDP camps. 22 were closed because the people had left the camps and had reintegrated into societies. So somehow we cannot continue to ask people that because they are poor, they should wait for handouts, and as they wait for handouts, they continue to, the poverty cycle continues to increase. So what we need to do is to fashion out a system whereby people who are multidimensionally poor, we create an environment for them to get themselves out of the poverty by being productive. Society must be willing, for example, to share the resources we have. If you have people who are displaced, who have no land, no houses, provide them land, provide them houses, allow them to go and farm. If they are displaced and they are in a place where there is no market, you create a market for them. You open a school for them. You create you create an environment for them to have their dignity returned. What we are doing in our intervention so far is to begin to look at people as if they are beggars, that they need to be spoon-fed. I think we need to drive away from it. 136 poor people, it's a huge number.
Million.
Yes. Million people is a huge number. 136 million is a huge number. But don't forget that within a short period, China had been able to put 800 million people out of poverty. 800 million is about 4 times our population. So it's not something that cannot be done. But it has to be done within the concept of an understanding that the underlying effect, what creates poverty additionally in the country today, is insecurity. So we have to address insecurity, we have to secure our people, and then we create an atmosphere for productive engagement. Productive engagement in terms of farming, productive engagement in terms of animal husbandry, productive engagement in terms of fishing, productive engagement in terms of minerals exploitation, productive engagement. Then as soon as we go to that productive engagement, we begin to again encourage our people to add value. Because like my brother here said, when you export or when you sell your raw materials, you're selling at a very low rate. But when you add value, you sell it at a high rate. If you have granite, you're a farmer, you farm granite. Granite, yes, you can sell your granite like that. But what if you add value by creating granite cake, uli, and then you have granite oil? The two products increase your income. And in the process, when you take it to the market, the sellers and the buyers, you are creating a value chain that reconnects our people in a manner that is totally different from all these our discussions around our natural fault lines. When people see that they have an economic value chain that connects them, the brotherhood is more solidified than when all that connects people is whether they belong to the same religion or they belong to the same ethnic group. This is why we are where we are today. So I believe that one way we can end poverty is to encourage productive capacity within our environment, reduce the incidence of insecurity, and we are good to go, I'm telling you. And we can do it. Our people are resilient, our people are productive. I come from a place that was overtaken by Boko Haram. They overtook the place, destroyed everything that was useful in that place, changed the name of our hometown from what it was to another name. Our people ran away. But when we returned back, we picked up the pieces of our lives, and if you go there now, you will see the place has recovered, bounced back. So our people are resilient, our people are capable of being productive once you create an enabling environment. Rather than hand out, let us encourage productivity. Rather than supporting people with little palliatives that they consume and it ends, why can't we begin to construct a regime that makes people rely on themselves? And that is the way to go. People must begin to be productive. Encourage people to have skills, to develop those skill sets, to use them productively. When people are farmers, create a cluster around a farming community and put a small machinery that can add value to the farm products. When people decide to become like maybe tailors or mechanics, create a cluster where they can synergize and cooperate with each other. It will increase their productive capacity. Where something is lacking in this place, this one will come and assist this one, and you discover that the economy will grow. So poverty, multidimensional poverty, you can reduce it to the barest minimum. Provide water, clean water. Provide schools. Provide good road infrastructure, going into the villages and the rest. I think we can address multidimensional poverty in this country. We are really sincerely concerned about addressing multidimensional poverty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sajo. And of course, when these linkages are improved and strengthened, we'll perhaps see the ripple effect in terms of quantum leap in our, domestic manufacturing capacity, even from the small scale level. But that is one aspect. The second aspect, perhaps, which is a bit more volatile, is responses to emergencies. Emergencies in different aspects, especially perhaps we have issues of natural disasters these days, flooding and all that, which has also, led to forced displacement of Nigerians and affected the livelihoods of many. Let me bring into the conversation our correspondent on humanitarian activities, Ilyasu Yakubu. But before I ask you the first questions, let me go back to the minister talking about the humanitarian, the trust fund and the concept behind it.
We have a huge tax on our hands. As we speak now, over 16 million Nigerians are affected by humanitarian crisis, either man-made or their natural disasters. Of course, security issues, pockets of unrest in different areas have not made this any better. Other natural disasters like the flooding, which we're presently going through, and the opening of a dam in another country, which will have its own effect on Nigeria, is another call for attention to ensure that people are catered for. It's a whole lot as it concerns the humanitarian crisis and what we need to deal with as a ministry. But now the bigger one is here, which is poverty alleviation, right? We have over, from the last statistics done by the Bureau of Statistics, it says that about 133 million Nigerians are poor. That's multidimensional poverty. And then about 70 million of these people are extremely poor. So they're basically unable to, they're living below $1.95 per day. The president is committed to SDG, which is raising these people out of poverty by 2030. But I'll start with one of the innovations we want to put on board. That's the Presidential Humanitarian and Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund. Now, we need to be able to go full-blown into a robust resource mobilization move that can help us pull together funding into one basket that will be used to address both the humanitarian crisis and the poverty alleviation programs and projects without necessarily going through the bureaucratic bottlenecks of government. So we must be innovative enough to find a way around this so that there's no impediment to implementation. And that's why we're coming up with the trust fund. Now, it's a trust fund that Nigeria would put a skin in the game. So we'll put our monies into the trust fund. So from the budgetary allocation, from special interventions, special intervention funds, Nigeria will be putting into this basket. Now, beyond this, we are looking at donor agencies, development partners coming into the space. We're also looking at harnessing the private sector to come into the space and support us.
All right, the Honorable Minister for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu, also expanding on some of the concepts, laying the foundation for, making that sector more inclusive and, of course, more responsive in terms of response to some of the emergencies that we've seen in recent time. Now, Ilyasu Yakubu, when we look at the functionality of some of the agencies that have worked in this sector. How is our response like to some of the challenges we have seen in terms of natural disasters, and how has that been perhaps revamped or even scaled up in recent time?
Well, thank you, Fisayo. The good news is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is aware of what all Nigerians are going through. And he also has the dossier of the humanitarian explosion that we've been experiencing, occasioned by the act of banditry, kidnapping, insurgency, and a lot more. That is why when he came on board immediately, he directed the National Emergency Management Agency to embark on food distribution, which is called the livelihood support. NEMA has gone virtually to all the 30 states of the Federation, including the FCT, distributing these items to vulnerable Nigerians. And of course, just like father likes daughter. When the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs came on board, she also hit the ground running, by promising Nigerians what the ministry is going to do, to improve their living standard. Of course, the people are happy because I've been physical to some of these distribution. I've gone around with the National Emergency Management Agency, and the people are happy.
In specific terms, can you tell us a few of the states you visited?
Yes, we visited Kano, we visited Akwa Ibom, we visited Anambra, we visited Jigawa, and lots more states. And
what has the response and distribution been like?
Yes, the response is in collaboration with the state emergency management agencies. And of course, it has been seamless all through. Because, you remember in the past when we distribute some of these items, the act of diversion and racketeering, has been, the order of the day. But today, a lot has been put in place, to checkmate some of this issue. And in most cases, NEMA don't just go to a state and just, give out food items to the state emergency management agency to distribute, on their own. That is being done in collaboration, with the two agencies, so that there won't be any problem of diversion or racketeering.
All right, let's look at issues of responding to disasters as well. We've been talking about issues of people moving away from the floodplains, and some warnings in terms of Lagdo Dam in recent time, and disaster forewarning as well. In terms of NEMA's response under the new directives, how have they been? Have they responded swiftly to areas where there has been distress?
Yes, and the new trend in disaster management this 2023 is disaster risk reduction mechanism. That is to prevent the effect of that disaster before it occurs. You understand? And it was inaugurated by the United Nations in 2015. And the DG NEMA has actually been emphasizing on that. And he also been interacting with the state governors, emphasizing that there should be, a local, organizing committee for disaster management. Disaster is local, as they said. It's a bottoms-up approach. You understand? So he has been engaging with the state governors, telling them what they are supposed to be doing, so that this act of this devastation, can be minimized in all its ramifications. He has also met with the Governors Forum. He has discussed with them where, they gave their words, to create the local, organizing committee for disaster management, which they have done. And they've been doing very well. It may interest you to know that before they are being told even, all the drainages in most part of the state have been cleared, and the people at the local, level have been sensitizing the locals on what they are supposed to do, in terms of so as to prevent, the occurrence of, or rather the effect of this devastation on them.
Thank you very much, Ilyasu Yakubu. We will soon bring in our correspondent from Maiduguri, that's Mohammed Goni, in our Maiduguri studio, because there's a linkage between some of the humanitarian challenges we've had and the conflicts, push and shove between government and agents of outlawry in some of those regions that has led to, us having a higher profile of, refugees and increasing number of refugees within the country, and even in some of the neighboring countries as well, with some Nigerian refugees in those regions as well. Mohammed Goni, if you're on now, can you give us, since you are there on the spot, what is happening in your axis? We understand that, of course, for a while now, people have been reintegrated to, some have been reintegrated, talking about the outlaws themselves, but talking about the societies where people have been resettled, and now there's a new lease of life in some areas in your zone. Mohammed Goni.
Thank you very much. It's no longer news that Borno State has gone through 13 years of insurgency, compelling governments to create IDPs camp. But with relative peace now, people have returned to their ancestral homes voluntarily in line with Kampala Convention, and government is doing everything to enable them return to normal life, livelihood activities such as agriculture and what have you. But then we now have a situation where government has to come in to assist those people as they pick up the pieces of their life through distribution of palliatives to enable them, settle down and start farming activities and other means of livelihood. Recently, the federal government has approved 100,000 households to benefit from palliative distribution, which it is also translated to about 400,000 persons. This is in addition to the already 300,000 households earmarked by Borno State government to receive palliative, which is also translated to about 1.8 million persons. Together is about, all in all, is about 400,000, 2.400 people selected to benefit from the distribution. Now, palliative distribution to the people of Borno State and the government is not only about mitigating the impact of subsidy removal. It is also a support to ongoing management of humanitarian situation occasioned by the insurgency. Now, you can also, it is also right to say that now effort is being made to enable people to return to farming activities through a wide range of supports to them, farm inputs, and what have you. But unfortunately, in the hinterlands, there are scores of incidences of people being denied access to farmland. And so governments, both at the federal and state level, are making concerted efforts to see that these people are not left to their fate. That is why government at what level are making efforts to see that even at the hard-to-reach areas, people also survive and continue with their means of livelihood. I will give you an example. In recent time, Borno State governor himself actually personally supervised distribution of palliative to the Mboa community. Now, for us to get there, we had to pass through Adamawa State, through Borno, and navigate through Chibok to get to Damboa, where the governor himself personally supervised distribution of food items to about 18,000 households. Now, aside this, Governor Bogana Umara himself personally flagged up distribution of presidential palliative in Maiduguri Metropolitan Council in Mesandari Ward, one of the wards that is said to have large population. 3,000 persons, 3,000 households were said to have benefited from distribution of this palliative. In all, both Maiduguri and Jere local government areas are expected, 55,000 households are expected to benefit from distribution of these food items, all in an effort not only to mitigate the impact of the subsidy removal, but it is also an effort to reach out to people who are devastated by activities of insurgency on one hand, and at the same time, a recent hike in food price, which make them helpless but to look forward to government support and support coming from donor agencies.
To tell us, if it's possible, can you tell us in concrete terms, communities that are now fully resettled and enjoying a new lease of life? Mohammed Goni, if you can hear me, I would like you to, perhaps give us in concrete terms the names or areas, the communities that have been fully resettled and are now, enjoying a new lease of life.
Yeah, these communities include, we have Baga on the shores of Lake Chad. We have Doro also on the shores of Lake Chad. We have, Goza local government in the southern Borno senatorial district. We have Pukawa, Bama local government, Banki, a commercial community in Bama local government. We also have Ngala, Kala Balige, Konduga, Kauri. These are some of the communities that the state government have resettled and have already picked up the pieces of their life. They have been engaged in all sorts of livelihood activities, and government is supporting them in that regard.
Been decongested a bit now because last time I visited a number of years ago, all those people from those areas were majorly in Maiduguri and its surroundings simply because of the activities of outlaws. But now, how is this capital?
The state capital, Maiduguri, though it still hosts some IDPs who choose to stay because government is not compelling anybody to return home against their will. But I will tell you that most of the people have chosen to remain in their ancestral homes, and the few ones that are in Maiduguri are also engaged in their personal businesses and livelihood activities that they hitherto know better, especially people from Bama. Bama people are known for, apart from being agrarian, they are also known for cap making. And if you can have opportunity to come to Maiduguri around the Mboa Road, you will see them making different caps and exporting such caps to various parts of the country and earning huge sum of money. And it will impress you that by the time you come to this place, you will not even think these people were once IDPs. They are now better. They even employ people. They have, middlemen who actually come all the way from other parts of the country to, take those caps to other parts of the country and are also making a livelihood out of that. Now, in some of the state capitals, in some of the local government capitals, when you go there, you see people, especially in Bama, people actually willingly go to farms, cultivate various vegetables because it is one of the areas that are also known for irrigation farming. Now, during the red plain farming also, you see them cultivating various, types of, vegetables and grains. And they are also looking forward to the dry season so that they engage in irrigation activities. And they are even saying that, no, even if they are given money, they will not return to the state capital again because they have now returned home and they are putting the past behind them and are ready to pick up the pieces of their life. Now, if you have discussion with some of these people, although they will tell you that they have passed through a lot, but they can still tell you that, yes, they have put all that behind them and they are ready to face the new lease of life. They are ready to face their life.
Mohammed Goni, I have somebody from that region in the studio. That's Ahmed Sajo. Perhaps you didn't send some of these reports to me because you didn't send me a cap from Baga area for me to, where so that I can actually know the activities are on. But our guest is here to rectify this matter. Well, he has given us an overview of what's happening, especially in this state. You are from that region. You are from that region, and let's look at some of the things that have happened in recent time. Is Adamawa equally enjoying the same scenario with Maiduguri, with Borno State? I beg your pardon.
I think at the peak of the insurgency, we used to have what we call the Bay States, Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, and we were all considered a disaster area. At one point in time, I think during President Jonathan's time, we were also under an emergency rule, kind of. But all this we have now exited to a large extent. But let me speak on an issue that we are always overlooking.
Go ahead, please.
When you talk about disaster mitigation, you know, it's far better than disaster management. If you can mitigate disaster, you will go a long way into saving resources that is normally unnecessarily expended on disaster management. Take the Lagdo Dam we are all talking about. The Lagdo Dam, there is a blueprint for addressing the crisis of the Lagdo Dam that has been on ground for a very long time. Every year in, year out, if you pick up the National Assembly approved budget, you will see that there is a provision for a buffer dam in Dasin Hausa. If that buffer dam had been there, wallahi, we would not be crying about Lagdo Dam. There has always been this budget for the dredging of River Benue because it has silted. It has silted to a point where water that flows into the Benue cannot be maintained, and so it overflows the banks. These are things we could do to mitigate this disaster. And I understand that the last time the Minister of Water Resources spoke, he also raised issues around the buffer dam and around the silting of the River Benue. Once we do that, we will be able to control. Just as also, instead of just giving palliative, we can give palliative as a stopgap measure. But the main issue, from what Mohamed Goni had said, is that the people must be encouraged to go into productive engagement. If the people who make caps are now telling you that they are comfortable enough not to want to expect anybody to come and assist them, if the people that are growing vegetables, mainly, I will tell you, mainly onions and some few other vegetables, but mainly onions, and there is a dry season grain they call muskwa, which requires very little effort to produce. If only we encourage these people to be productive, they will not need anybody to come and assist them. Let them be the ones to be the productive persons. But one last thing I want to say about all this poverty alleviation, poverty mitigation, and poverty eradication is that you cannot do that without a reliable data. This one we're talking about, we said 63% of Nigerians are suffering from multidimensional poverty. It is that 63 that we calculate based on an estimated population of 200 million, and that's why we come up with the 133 million Nigerians in multidimensional poverty. These are all statistics that we have not consciously made effort, to verify. And we need it. We need a data bank. We need a register of vulnerable persons. We need to know their level of vulnerabilities. We need to know what the level of assistance that is needed for them to exit from being vulnerable to people that can rely on themselves. We need all of these things. Beyond just managing our disaster, we need to mitigate our disaster. And in mitigating the disaster, we need to create a dynamic society, a society that, supports itself. And I think going forward, that should be the focus of this administration. We are talking about 100 days, but there are thousands of days we're waiting for. And within those 1,000 days that are coming, we need to start refocusing on not just mitigating disaster, not just managing disaster, not just managing people in internally displaced persons camps, but in creating a population that is productive, vibrant, and that these productive engagements include value addition, include cluster building, include assistance to each other. And of course, on a very, very final note, let me tell you that the local governments in this country are not also intervening sufficiently enough. Anytime the local government comes, for example, where I live here in Abuja, to ask me for tenement rate, I always ask them, what is your function? We are our own municipal government. we provide our water, we provide our security, we provide even the road to my estate, we built it ourselves. So what is the contribution of government? That's one. Two, people who are well endowed in society must also put a little funds. The humanitarian funds that the Honorable Minister, Dr. Betaidu, is talking about, must not rely on international donors alone. Internal donors too must put some resources into the basket. The basket is large enough to take resources from outside and from also internally. And I think once we become our brothers' keepers, we can definitely build a very dynamic society. And I think that is the way to go. Not just to wait to intervene in disaster, not just to wait to give some incentive or some palliative to people, but we must encourage people to develop the capacity to be on their own so that we can have a society that is self-reliant on itself.
Thank you so much, Amasajo. Ilyasu Yakubu has been standing by. We are still in your sector. We've spoken, elaborately and for a while on interventions in the in the northeast. In terms of the northwest, in concrete terms, have we seen any movement in the direction? They have also suffered, the consequences of banditry and all that, and agrarian life has been affected in areas in Sokoto, Zamfara, and even Katsina and Kebbi as well. And in terms of Kebbi as well, we've seen issues of flooding affecting agrarian life as well. So what are the interventions in those places in this past few months?
Yes, before I go into that, Visayo, let me add up to what Mrs. Sajo has said about Lagdo Dam. Lagdo Dam is 7 billion cubic meter capacity. And the proposed dam in Adamawa State, initially it was supposed to be 16 billion cubic meter capacity, but now it has been reduced to 9 billion. 9 billion. So, if the federal government will put effort and create that dam in Adamawa State, just like he said, we won't be talking about Lagdo Dam anymore. And you may also be aware that we have about 7 countries, surrounding neighboring Nigeria, and they also have dams. What if in the event they release water, in their dams, what will happen to Nigeria? So I think what Mr. Sajo has said, we should take it very, very seriously. Talking about intervention in the Northwest, NEMA has a blueprint. NEMA does not just think of going to a particular zone, for intervention, Because
I'm not saying in specific terms, I'm saying that our conversations have, because we went to Maiduguri and our guest in the studio is also from the Northeast. I'm saying that because of, just to have a spread in terms of the ideas we have shared, in the Northwest, are we seeing such interventions, and have those states responded as well in mitigating the plight of people who have been on the wrong end of the activities of banditry and outlawry?
Yes, NEMA had deployed its personnel, to all the states in the Northwest. And the food I'm talking about, that is the livelihood support, has also been deployed. Distribution has commenced earnestly. And the people are seriously getting the feel, of the federal government intervention. And talking about also the presidential announcement on the deployment of 200,000 metric tons of grains, that has also commenced. And NEMA is ready, or rather is standing by, to take that distribution to all the states of the Federation.
All right, thank you very much, Ilyasu Yakubu. We'll come back for our final comments, but there's no way we can, remove the issues of insecurity from some of the forced displacements that we've had in Nigeria, talking about the refugee situation and even some of the problems of poverty and, issues that we've seen in recent time. And one would say even to the issue of economy as well. A secure environment is the only one that will advertise the economy as one that will be stable and perhaps attractive for foreign investors. To achieve this, one of the things that we saw at the advent of this administration is the appointment of new defense chiefs. Najatu Tijani is our defense correspondent and joins us now in terms of sector reforms. Najatu, in terms of your first interventions, tell us the climate and the body language and the morale in terms of officers and men of our military at this time, in terms of confronting the issues that we have talked about and the albatross of insecurity that we have faced for a while. Najatu.
Thank you, Fisayo. I'm going to start with the morale, and one of the earliest interventions, President Bola Tinubu promised to hit the ground running when he assumed office, and one of the fastest responses he had was to appoint the service chiefs within 3 weeks of assuming office. And one of the hallmarks of leadership is motivation, and for the military to have the men of caliber who have been appointed as their leaders, that was really a huge morale booster. Let's take a look at each of these men who have been appointed by the president. If you start with the Chief of Defense Staff, he's not just an ordinary officer, he's an elite officer, an excellent officer in the sense that he belongs to, in his training, he belonged to the Infantry Corps. And the Infantry Corps has a name. It's called the Queen of Battle. And when you look at all battles that are won, whether underground, covert operations, even ones that the nation doesn't get to hear about, they win the battle before it actually takes place. So that's the kind of background that the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, is coming from. He has also served in the front lines out there with the men. He has been in the theater of operations in Hatlinke, and it is from that theater command that he was appointed Chief of Defense Staff. So we're talking about men of caliber, men of excellence who know what they are doing. And the morale among the men in the military right now is high, considering the kind of leadership that they have. Let me quickly also talk about the Chief of Army Staff as well, Lieutenant General Taurid Lagbaja, who also was platoon commander of 93 Battalion. That's no mean feat. It's no small feat in the sense that to be a platoon commander is to be able to bring men together. At any point in time in this nation, one person or the other must have gone through the youth service, the National Youth Service Corps. And if anyone belonged to any of these platoons, that is even at that level, one can see how difficult it is to get people from different backgrounds, from different homes to come together. That is the work of the platoon commander. The platoon commander is the motivating force, the stabilizing force who draws people from different backgrounds. And the Nigerian military, of course, is made up it is a military for Nigerians, by Nigerians, made up of Nigerians. And so bringing different people from different backgrounds and being able to bring them together as a stabilizing force to say, let's go out there into the battlefield, let's keep the peace, let's do what it takes to ensure that the nation is stable, is like I said, is no mean feat. Let's quickly also look at, just briefly, the Chief of Naval Staff, who is Vice Admiral Emmanuel Ogala. He, as we speak, right now, the Chief of Naval Staff is having a retreat with officers and men at the Naval Headquarters because of the shift rather towards retraining of the men. The world is now a global village, and at the touch of a button, things happen. You can be connected to whatever is going on around the world, and the military is doing everything it can to ensure that its personnel, men and officers, are at par, abreast of what is going on the world over. And so Nigerians will get to see more of these retreats, more of these trainings, more of these shifts in strategy. Some will be made known, some will not be made known, but all in a bid to ensure that Nigeria keeps the peace. And the Chief of Naval Staff also comes to the table with experience from ECOWAS. The Chief of Naval Staff actually served in 1996 as part of the ECOWAS forces on a Nigerian naval ship. And now, which brings us to the Chief of the Air Staff, that's Air Marshal Hassan Abubakar, who has also he also brings a lot to the table. He has experience when it comes to logistics, when it comes to operations, when it comes to training commands. Now, these are men that the president thought of. When you look at it, before their appointments, there were agitations in some quarters and some reports that it was taking too long to appoint them. But why 3 weeks? But 3 weeks, when you look at it, shows that the president did his homework, took his time to ensure, in line with his promise of getting people who were the right caliber for the job. The president consistently talked about making sure that he got men for the job, and not men who warranted their office, men who deserved to be in that place, not looking at any other thing like ethnicity and all that, but who is the man for the job. And the president has been able to demonstrate with the caliber of men that have been appointed. Having said that, we talked about the morale among the men.
Before we go to morale, talking about who fits the job, let's look at the expectations from the man who has just been given a job a couple of weeks ago, the defense minister. Let's take this report. You did it yourself, so let's hear that background report on the expectations from the defense minister.
Conducting a detailed assessment of the current national security situation would be the first priority of the new defense minister. This would involve analyzing various threats and vulnerabilities faced by the country, including insurgency, banditry, kidnapping, and communal conflicts. And as a former governor, this is a function which the new minister is already familiar with. Based on this assessment, the minister is expected to develop a comprehensive strategy which takes into account both short-term tactical responses and long-term preventive measures.
Common Minister of Defense, his job is well cut out. Well cut out because the country is facing security challenges, which of course he has to be the lead in ensuring that the country's security is strictly maintained. However, the system is also already put in place for him.
Effective collaboration among various security agencies such as the military, police, intelligence agencies and paramilitary forces is crucial. The minister needs to foster better coordination and information sharing among these entities to ensure a unified response to security challenges.
Especially, the Honourable Minister must take very seriously his relationship with the Office of the National Security Advisor, where they have to work together. On the other hand, the Honourable Minister has to make effort, really, to work also with the service chiefs, who also are more than willing to work with him. So having these two together will actually improve the coordination activities of security in the country. And there will be one, improved security, there will be less expenditure, as far as the area of defense and security are concerned.
Strengthening the capabilities of security forces through training and modernization is paramount, say experts, and this includes investing in advanced equipment, intelligence gathering techniques, and specialized training programs to enhance the overall effectiveness of operations against criminal elements.
Training here for the Armed Forces of Nigeria, training is an ongoing activity. Yes, the Armed Forces is doing it, but the minister is the leader. He has to put that as a priority, to continue to train and retrain the armed forces.
With Nigeria's security landscape in a state of flux, the new Minister of Defense will be under close scrutiny. The expectations are high, and the nation's stability hinges on his ability to develop and execute a coherent and robust security strategy which safeguards the lives and livelihoods of Nigerian citizens. The minister's
All right, thank you, Naija. To Tijani, of course, you're here in the studio. So let's just interrogate some of the things you've said that will be in the in-tray of the, defense chiefs and the new defense minister as well. When we talk of insecurity in Nigeria, it's a hydra-headed monster. It depends on the region you are talking about. Then you know the challenge. Perhaps when you mention the challenge, you know the region, whichever way. South East has the unknown gunmen and other activities there. We have, in the South, some activities, vandalism and all that, over pipelines as well. In the Northwest is banditry. Northeast, as we said earlier, outlaws and insurgents are all over the place. Facing all this, will take men and materials. When you look at what has been done or is being done in terms of the interactions the chiefs have had, is there any cause, for optimism?
Is there any cause for
optimism?
There is indeed. You have to first of all look at who the Minister of Defense is and who the Minister of State for Defense is. That Bello Matawalle is the Minister for State Defense, who headed a state that is known to have been really troubled by bandit terrorists who during that his time as governor of Zamfara State. It was an issue which was quite a national issue, to say the least. Their activities have been well documented, but you have to look at where the Minister of State is coming from and the experience that he's coming from with some of the lessons that he learned as governor of Zamfara State. Similarly, the Minister of Defense as well. Every governor is, it's said that every governor is the chief security gatekeeper of the state, in the sense that, of course, he receives weekly, hourly, timely reports of the security situation at the state at any given time. He has these statistics, at his fingertips. All he needs to do is make a phone call and he can get the information that he needs. So coming with this experience as two governors who have governed over states and have this sort of briefings, there is optimism in the sense that they've already, in one way or the other, have been security gatekeepers. It's time for them to now expand their horizons and work with the National Security Advisor, the defense chief, and of course the service chiefs, as well as other security agencies. In the past, Nigeria has been mainly about peacekeeping, not just in the region, but of course within the country, that being largely the purview of the Nigeria Police Force. But as security challenges have evolved over time, so have the duties of the Nigerian military. And you find the Nigerian military now, like you said, fighting a hydra-headed monster which keeps evolving. And this calls for a change in strategy, this calls for a change in tactics. And this is where the defense minister, that is Badaru, has experience as well, having come with some innovations while he was governor of Jigawa State, having looked just outside the box during his time as governor. He is a person well known to look at collaborations and look outside to ensure that he brings new ideas and innovation. So there is optimism rather, when they work hand in hand and when they, of course, go back to the drawing board to change the way things are at the moment.
All right, thank you, Naija. But I would like to ask you, before I come to, my guest, Ahmed Sajo, because I saw him nodding while you were making your intervention. In terms of numbers, do we have enough men to confront all this, the hills of our security challenges?
So the issue is not really about the numbers. The issue is about tactics. The issue is about strategy, because an army of 100 can actually overcome 1,000. It's not really about the numbers. It's about the technical know-how. It's about the warfare. It's about what you have at hand, the equipment. What is it that you have in terms of strategy, in terms of equipment, in terms of the tools of the trade? What are these things that you have that can take this battle to either these people or otherwise just stabilize things as they are. In the sense that every year the Nigerian military calls for recruitment. This is a yearly occurrence, and every year the Nigerian military recruits people from every background you can think of in this country. Every single local government in this country is represented in the Nigerian military. Every township you can think of, whether it's Ire-Podun, where the chief of army staff hails from, or whether it's Shanono, where the chief of the air staff is from. Every locality you can think of, even names that you probably never have heard of, they are there in the Nigerian military. So the numbers are there. The issue now is for the military, the defense chief, the defense ministry to look into now the type of equipment that is needed in this changing warfare. For instance, the Nigerian Air Force is set to take delivery of 18 attack helicopters any moment from now. But in this month of September, the Turkish government is expected to supply some of these helicopters to the nation. So what brings, another thing is it only these air platforms? What other platforms is the Nigerian military looking at in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of robotics? So these are the issues actually which I believe that the Ministry of Defense will be looking into. Only yesterday, the president had a meeting with the service chiefs and the chief of defense staff and the service chiefs, and I believe that these are some of the things. The meeting was held behind closed doors. Nobody really knows what they talked about, and but I believe that these are some of the things that in the future they will be looking into. They will talk about strategy, which is the key, because there's a saying that if one keeps doing things the same way, the results, it will keep being the same results. So there has to be a shift in tactic. There has to be a look at the global stage, what is being done on the global scale. But you have to also look at the peculiar nature of Nigeria's security climb. Nigeria, in terms of security, when it is not just like certain nations which have just maybe one language or one tribe. Nigeria is a complex environment. So taking all these things into cognizance will help the nation plan a new policy thrust, a new policy directive, or at least improve on the ones which are already on ground, considering the nature of Nigeria's security climb and, of course, the evolving security challenges on ground.
Thank you very much, Najatu. Ahmed Sajo wanted to make some interventions based on some of your report and some of the comments you have made. Ahmed Sajo, you wanted to say something about the security architecture and perhaps what to do to combat this giant or perhaps daunting hill of insurgency and insecurity.
I think there is nothing daunting or insurmountable in it. Remember that you talked about optimism. Let's start from that point of optimism. Remember, there was a time that we were so afraid of suicide bombing that even Abuja was not safe. Today, suicide bombing is almost, a forgotten issue. But how did we get there? You're talking about internal security. Talking about internal security, you have certain factors to consider. First, you're dealing with non-state actors who have taken up arms against the state. They have no rules of engagement. They operate, in a barbaric manner. But you, as a trained military of a nation, you have to go by rules of engagement. Sometimes it's a mitigating thing for the military in trying to rout these people, but it does not mean that it's insurmountable. That's one. Two, you have to look at both the kinetic and the non-kinetic methods of winning this war. She talked about us being a very complex and multi-cultural, multi-ethnic, multi-society. Yes, but there's one common factor in fighting internal security anywhere in the world. That factor is the factor of winning the hearts and the minds of the people you want to secure. That must be at the front burner of our security architecture. How do we win over the people? Because what the insurgents, the bandits, and the unknown gunmen in this, all of them, they have one thing in common. They instill fear in the people. It is the fear factor that they use to subdue the people. How do we win back the people and instill courage in the people to assist the fighting forces to recover the country? That's then the second most important element in internal security operations is intelligence gathering, processing, and sharing. We have seen a situation. I was a member of a State Security Council for 4 years, so I know. There was a time when security agencies consider it a pride to hide intelligence from their colleagues. And in the process, you know, they were jeopardizing the fight against insurgency in the Northeast. And I'm sure if they do it in the Northwest, it will jeopardize the fight against banditry. If they do it in the Southeast, it will jeopardize the fight against unknown government. If they do it in the South-South, it will jeopardize the fight against those that destroy the mainstay of our economy. So the important thing is that there has to be collaboration, cooperation. The security forces cannot fight in silos. They cannot operate in silos. They have to come together, you know, as one group. They have to confront this thing as people that are fighting the same war. So if you have an intelligence, you know, on an issue, share it with the other person, you know, process it, you know, effectively. And once it is processed, you know, make sure that the mitigating effects are shared. I just heard recently that the National Security Advisor is saying that the police force will be the foremost agency for internal security. That is fantastic. We wish to return to that level where the military, you know, safely goes back to the barracks to concentrate on training themselves into a fighting force that can protect Nigeria from external aggression. Internal aggression is an aberration. Internal aggression is not expected of a nation that is. So we need to collaborate between the security agencies and even the political class. The president as commander-in-chief and as also the chief leader, the chief director of state affairs, you know, must bring the two together. The security, as we do our security planning, security, we do as my sister says, we plan our strategy, we reduce the strategy into tactical components, then the tactical components become operational deliverables. As we go through that route, we should also consider what political activities are we going to have on ground to mitigate, to create a more stable society. How do we ensure that we mitigate poverty to a level where people do not become so despondent as to listen to sermons that says, go and kill another person in order to survive? How do we do that? How do we use our new Ministry of Information and National Orientation to reorient people generally, to realize that we are in a state, a country that, you know, puts a stake for every one of us in it? How do we use the people to now expose, you know, bad elements within them? Because most of those bandits, I can tell you for free that I was part of a lot of negotiations in my state and in the Northeast. I can tell you that a lot of these people are known by the people. We have had a case where, you know, through intelligence, some women were arrested. They were carrying knapsack bags as if they were going to the farm to go and spray chemicals on their farms. Incidentally, inside that knapsack was food, prepared food for insurgents in the bush. You know, we have had cases like that. People, the insurgents, they need fuel to fuel their motorcycles that they use in running around to come and how do they get the fuel? There are people who supply them the fuel. We have caught people with bags of gari. It looks like gari, but by the time you tear the bag, inside there were guns and ammunition. We have caught people who were supposed to be selling second-hand cloth, but that second-hand cloth was just a cover. There were arms and ammunition inside the bales. You know, so the people know. We know that if you go to Birnin Gwari, they will tell you that the people of Birnin Gwari know some of the bandits that attacked Birnin Gwari, but that they were afraid because there was a time in this country, and I say it with a sense of disturbance in me, that there was a time when you release intelligence about social miscreants to security agencies, and the security agencies expose the person that gives them those intelligent informations within the society, and then these people come back and attack the people. So by the time we work out a system that puts all of security as our own responsibility, I am thrilled by one thing, that in the last 8 years, Jigawa has not been in the news for insecurity. Whatever magic Badr worked out to make sure that Jigawa was saved from all the bad happenings in the Northwest, he should apply it nationally so that we are safe. That I can tell you. So we're looking forward to a system that really works for the people. Essentially, the bottom line is for the people, by the people, and with the people.
Thank you very much. You've been wonderful today, Amasajo, on key issues affecting national lives 100 days in office. Let me bring on board all my correspondents now for their final thoughts and expectations. Let me start with people out of the FCT. I start with Michael Olale in Lagos, Blue Economy, the economy, the expectations from your sector in quick, short bullets. What are your expectations? 100 days done. What is next?
I think next we will be seeing growth across 5 aspects. Let me first take the first one in terms of ports. The development of the port development to start having what we call smart ports. And that has already started along the Lekki axis. And we'll start seeing the proliferation of more ports. There's a port ongoing in Badagry. Ondo State has signaled interest to have a deep sea port. We'll start having port like that. And definitely to also open up more port for business, knowing fully well that the concentration industry will bring about dredging, increasing the depth of some of these ports that are not really ports, that are not cargo destination in the past. We start having them having active business at those ports. Then another aspect is what I call cargo development, cargo handling, cargo management, and the likes. Nigeria is connected to, there are 28 states in Nigeria connected by water. So we start having increased movement of cargoes by the waterways among states. We move away from the past in which the highways will be dominated by trailers and the likes. So the waterways will, and what this will mean is that economic activity will start developing along this axis. A good example, from Lagos to Ondo and to the southern part of the country, south-south, we start having business activities, farming activities, and lastly, before I call it a day, before I round off, there will also be what I will call tourism. A good example I saw in Europe is a situation where they have museum that showcases their wildlife, the various species of creatures in their wildlife, where people can come from all over the world to see. It's just a way of telling their story, their marine life story. So we should be having investment in all these aspects of Fisayo.
In this case, aquatic life. Since you have mentioned my state so many times in your intervention, you have been the best correspondent today. Let me quickly go to Mohammed Goni very quickly in Maiduguri. Mohammed Goni, expectations before we round up.
People and government of Borno State are optimistic that better days are ahead. Now, Borno State government, to ensure youth employment, has created about 5 mega vocational training institutes and 19 others spread across just to get the youth involved. means getting their means of livelihood. Now, in the security program, government is supporting security outfits, 350 motorcycles and vehicles just given out in recent time. And at the same time, modern irrigation farming is also taking shape to ensure that food sufficiency and food security in the country. So we can beat our chest to say that better days ahead, and a population that is whose hope is rekindled is already ready to join in the development of the country. Thank you very much.
Very much, Mohammed Goni. Back in our studio, Benny is here. So, Benny, a penny for your thoughts.
Well, oftentimes you hear business, government has no business in business, but for the present administration, their business in business now is creating an enabling environment for businesses to grow. And we see that with a team that has been assembled from the Minister for Coordinating Economy, talking about Wole Edun. He's an experienced investment banker, so we should be expecting investment inflow, both foreign and local. And he talked about the Lagos model, where even cemeteries were given out to investors to manage. And also looking at Doris Anite, who is the Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment, though she's trained medical personnel, but she has transitioned into a financial expert and a human resource manager. We'll also be expecting her experiences in driving investment and growing industry and creating jobs in the country, as well as the former governor of Kebbi State, talking about Abubakar Atiku Bagudu. He's coming from an economic background too and having experience in governance. We expect all of this to be put together for us to see the results going forward.
Ilyasu Yakubu, you have been talking about, lifting people out of poverty and moving from, issues of dependencies to self-reliance. What are your comments at this time? We're moving from, response alone to getting the individual to contribute to national development and not just being at the wrong end of what conflict and perhaps nature in protest has ended.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I'm happy to have heard the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs talked about creating a trust fund for emergency and humanitarian responses. That means that the ministry will no longer wait for the federal government to give out money before they respond to any form of emergency or humanitarian crisis that may occur at any given time. She also talked about creating access to equity for small and medium enterprises, whereby people can get access to money to live for themselves, to do business for themselves, so that this target of alleviating or rather lifting Nigerians out of poverty, can be achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Najatu Tijani is a defense correspondent. A case for the defense.
When you look at this administration's 8-point agenda, which includes inclusion and poverty eradication, among others, you know that the administration is focused on stability, and the Nigerian military is a stabilizing force. In future, I expect Nigerians should expect to see that the military will look inwards more than ever, as the nation has thousands of young people who are highly intelligent, who are also very good with the global subjects which the world is leaning towards, talking about cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, robotics and the like, we're seeing a generation of young people who have so much to give, and we can expect to see the Nigerian military use these people, tap into their potential, tap into their intelligence, with the Ministry of Defense leading, and with the Ministry of Defense at the helm of affairs, better days are ahead.
All right, thank you very much, Najatu Tijani. Ahmed Saju has been a go-to man in every sector today. We have learned on your experience to perhaps have an insight to the expectations of people from government, and of course government to the people as well. This interaction continues. It's 100 days old at this time, but the journey is far and over the cliffs and the valleys of Nigeria's journey to destination. What are your expectations?
Well, my expectations actually is that some of the seeds we are planting now that have even resulted in difficulty. Nigeria is like a country that is on the operating table. Of course, the theater nurse is saying we should not use an overdose of anesthesia, otherwise we may lose the patient. But the patient is, you cannot operate the patient without some anesthesia. So we're seeing a situation where there is a lot of hardship, but there are also mitigating activities, some palliatives here and there, and some policy shifts here and there to mitigate the hardships that people are facing. Some incentives here and there, like single-digit loans available, making single-digit loans available to some businesses, and all that, and then trying to reduce tax burdens and trying to ensure that the economy functions in a very positive manner. We're looking at all of these things, and we're looking at a situation where we are trying to secure our people, reduce the ugly effect of insecurity, dovetailing into food insecurity by denying people access to farms and things. We're working on all these things, and they may take time for the fruits to begin to bear and ripen, but I can assure you that we're moving very steadily from seeding to fruition, and I believe that if we are patient enough, we will harvest bountiful dividends. But the period of patience is actually a period of hardship, and there are times when people become a little bit irrational when they are in hardship. But we will continue to appeal to people to begin to see things from a different perspective.
Thank you so much.
We cannot eat our seeds and expect to harvest anything at the end of the harvest period.
Thank you very much, and your ideas we hope will continue to germinate to national development. Let me thank my analysts, correspondents, and guests today, starting with Michael Olalaye from Lagos. Michael spoke about blue economy, and we expect that those ships you promised will eventually get to the shore of prosperity for Nigeria. Thank you for joining us. Guests in the studio, Najatu Tijani, the first correspondents who've advised and also giving assessments on that sector. Thank you very much for your interventions today. You are the lady who was part of the people who flew to Kano, from Abuja to Kano. Thank you so very much for being part of today's interventions and discussions. And thank you, Benny, for being a part of your business correspondent in terms of eating the fruits and not the seed. Thank you so much. And of course, Ilyasu Yakubu. We move from being humanitarian issues and all that to an egalitarian society. Thank you for being a part of it. And of course, Mohammed Goni in Maiduguri. Thank you for your interventions. Resettlement still ongoing, a lot of hope, and even perhaps Maiduguri fully encapsulates the renewed hope mantra. My name is Fisao Ogunfi, thanking you for being a part of this broadcast. It has been a broadcast courtesy of Africa's finest and largest Nigeria's television authority, giving you the best of news, reviews, previews, and interviews. Thank you. From now till we meet again, continue to play your politics for the greater good. Bye-bye now.